This episode brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Shifting a little money here, a little there, and hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can get a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help find you options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
We'd be hard-pressed to think of one family who's not been touched or affected by the drug crisis, overdoses, hospitalizations, and deaths. Our guest went through 2 incidents with her children, and she's here to tell her story on the Law Enforcement Today show. We're all over social media. Be sure to like and follow our Facebook page, Law Enforcement Today Radio Show. We're on Twitter. Follow us at LET Radio Show Podcast. And on Instagram, look for LET Radio Show Podcast. Of course, don't forget our website, letradioshow.com. See you there. Joining us from Colorado, we have Pamela Brinker on the phone. Pamela is a mom of 2, and every family I know, pretty much everyone we've heard of somewhere along the way, has had an issue where they've been affected by the drug problem, whether it be opiates, doesn't matter what it is, overdoses, hospitalizations, mental health issues, and sadly, deaths as well. She's also author of the book Conscious Bravery, Caring for Someone with Addiction. Her website is PamelaBrinker.com. Pamela, thanks so much for coming on the Law Enforcement Today show and talking about an issue that is very prominent. It's happening in a lot of places, but people are still sweeping it under the rug and not talking about it.
It's such a pleasure to be here. And yes, that's exactly what's happening.
And I don't know, and I don't want to sound overly dramatic. I don't know of a family who whether it's a distant relative or a direct relative that has been impacted directly by drug problems in the United States nowadays. And don't quote me on this. I think in 2022, there were over 104,000 people died from fentanyl overdoses. And that's the United States alone. That's just 1 year. And stuff I was dealing with as a policeman in the 1980s with heroin is still an issue. Cocaine still an issue. Methamphetamine still an issue. All that stuff is still an issue. And the thing is, people don't seem to really want to talk about it. And I'm really grateful that you are talking as a parent. Parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles that got kids all need to be concerned.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad to speak from my personal experience, and that's what I feel how we can help one another is actually talking about what's happening to us and what we're doing about it.
You've got 2 sons, correct?
Yes. And they're in their 20s now, but they were teenagers.
All right. How are they doing now?
Addicted. Now they're great. That's what I'm knocking on, and they're doing well. So they're both clean, sober as of today, but that's one of the things that it took me a long time to realize, that relapse is part of the struggle. Not necessarily. I've been sober almost 31 years now. Never had a relapse.
Right. That's a term that medical professionals came up with, and they convince people that it's part of the equation. It doesn't have to be.
You're absolutely right. It doesn't have to be, but for many, many people that I've treated, it has been.
And unfortunately, here's what happens, Pamela. And unfortunately, that becomes, in my opinion, an excuse for people to go out there and try one more time. And if they've been with opiates in particular, and they've been off them for a while, and their tolerance is gone, and they get something with a little bit of fentanyl in it, it kills them. And they die in dramatic fashion. So I'm not one to advocate for the term relapse. And when people talk about that in a clinical sense, I will argue all day long. Love
that. And I don't love the word relapse either. I just use it because that's what everyone else identifies it with. Maybe the best way to talk about it is to put it on a continuum and call it setbacks, realigning. I'm sure, hats off to you, by the way. That's a huge accomplishment to be sober 31 years.
Well, I was forced into it. Like many people. And for me, I don't talk about it in this show because it's not about my story. But for me to have a happy, productive life, that's a requirement.
Oh, and I love that you're saying that, John Jay, because a happy, productive life is what we all want. And that's what I wanted, but that's where the challenge was. My sons were having humongous troubles, and so it was hard to find happiness at times. But I guard my happiness with my life now, that's for sure.
Absolutely. So when we'll talk about your story with your sons, how old were they? There's two sons and two incidents. Which one do you want to start with? The oldest one?
Yeah, I'll start with the oldest one. And
how
they
old
are
was
in
he
their
when
20s.
he had a problem? When it became a real emergency for you?
He was 16, and the reason why it became a problem, their stepdad, my then husband, was diagnosed with an incurable brain cancer 12 years ago and died within just a little over a year. And so both of my sons, in their pain and grief, turned not just to me, but also to one another and to drugs and alcohol as kind of an answer to their pain. So anyway, my son was 16 when my oldest was 16 when he first started using stimulants, doubling his doses. He had only shortly after my husband passed gotten a prescription for something like Adderall. Most people are familiar with Adderall as a treatment for ADD or ADHD, but he'd gotten something like that. But anyway, the incident happened a year ago in just around November when he got, again, 2 prescriptions for stimulants, very much like Adderall for the ADD. He was in college, and he took a month's supply in what looked like to me about 5 days because I found the few remaining ones in his apartment bathroom. So he had texted me that morning, John, and then had called me and left a really weird voicemail. So I hopped in the car and drove the 100 miles to get to where he lived. On the way, I called someone from the sober living house where he'd be living, and I said, I need some help. I'm not going to be able to do this on my own, I'm pretty sure. So he met me over there, and long story short, my son was absolutely had psychotic symptoms. He was not making sense. He was talking super, super fast. He was beyond agitated. He was furious and yelling when we arrived. He came outside and continued yelling, and 2 people, I guess, from the apartment complex called the police. And it was just horrific, really. It was under 30 degrees, and he was outside shirtless, barefooted, and in thin pants. And several teams got there in short order. The crisis response team, paramedics. The crisis response team, one of them, I guess the team lead, came over and spoke with me, and I knew I had about probably 45 seconds to say what had happened. And so I told her the meds that I'd found in his bathroom cabinet and that he had a history of drug use, and that he was not normally psychotic, even though he had mental health issues like anxiety and ADHD, ADD. So anyway, she and some people talked to him really calmly. They got him sitting. More first responders kept arriving. My friend from the sober living house said he'd never seen anything like it. He'd never seen any group of responders be as calm as they were, as kind as they were, as assertive. And basically they had him sitting but put a blood pressure cuff on him. And I stayed far away because I wanted them to do their job. And I just watched the situation, but I saw it starting to escalate when I saw my son start to get more and more agitated. Finally, they just grabbed him, put him in a gurney, and took him to the hospital. And I ran over and talked to one of the remaining people, and they said they're afraid he's going to have a heart attack. Mm-hmm. And so I followed over to the hospital. They had sedated him. He stayed there overnight. Anyway, it was for you and for our listeners.
But let's take a break on that note. We're going to take a short break. We're talking with Pamela Brinker. When we return, we're going to talk more about this potentially deadly drug incident with one of her sons and much more. This is Law Enforcement Today Show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Has this ever happened to you? You sign up for a free email newsletter, and within hours, you're receiving tons of spam. That won't happen when you subscribe for the free Law Enforcement Today radio show email newsletter. We won't spam you. No more than 2 emails a week. I promise. All subscribers are automatically entered in all future contests. Sign up at letradioshow.com. Scroll down to the sign-up area. That's letradioshow.com.
Miss an episode of Law Enforcement Today? You don't have to anymore, because now you can listen to it on Podopolo, the free new app that makes listening anytime, anywhere so easy. Catch up on shows you've missed and chat with John J. Wiley right there too. Download for free on the Apple or Google Play stores. That's Podopolo. And John J. Wiley wants to hear from you inside Podopolo.
This is the Law Enforcement Today show, returning conversation with Pamela Brinker, and she is a mother of 2 sons, both of whom developed problems with drugs and overdoses and mental health problems and emergencies. And this is an issue that has been catastrophic for so many families across the country. She's also authored the book Conscious Bravery, Caring for Someone with Addiction, and her website is PamelaBrinker.com. Pamela, before we went to break, you're talking about the episode with your son, and you drove the first son. You drove about 100 miles, and he was psychotic, as you said. And I'm wondering, is that stimulants or uppers, as you call them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, he was on 2 prescribed stimulants. Turns out I found out later he'd also been using crystal meth that he got on the street.
And here's the reason why. When people are overdosing or have too much of a stimulant in them, they pose different threat levels than someone who's an opiate user, for example. And opiates, usually they nod out and there's not a whole lot of violence from them. People with, and I'll equate it with PCP, cocaine, crack cocaine, some of the worst battles I've ever been in my police career were people with that. I'm glad it didn't come to that, or did it?
It did not. And, I have to thank God and my son, too, and that team, really. I have to thank the crisis response team. And I'm a person that I've only seen police do great work, really. And unfortunately, we've been involved with the police a lot, and it's usually been the crisis response teams who are trained with in mental health and addiction awareness, and they're savvy to as you said.
I got to take a little bit of an exception to that, because we were doing that in the 1980s. And we had that kind of training. We just didn't have the words. Every street cop was trained in that. And we always worked in things that are so commonplace and used nowadays. De-escalation, we did every day. Community policing was called regular policing before it became a thing. And critical response teams, I'm not knocking them. I'm not knocking specialized teams. And I'm not saying there's not a need for them. But it's almost as if it's to say all the times we talk people off the edge, somehow or another, was it just luck? I don't know. We were doing it for years.
No, I'm so glad you're clarifying that, actually. Yes, no, police, I think, know what they're doing. It's just that this particular team really took exception to their skill, I would say, and the timing. They threw my son in the gurney, I think, pretty much just in the nick of time. So he awoke the next morning in the hospital and thankfully, very humbly said, I need to go back to treatment. I really want to live. And he saw the terror in my eyes and knew he needed support. And some people can do it on their own. And a lot of people have to do it because they're required, but he chose it. Anyway, so that's
I'm glad you said that.
Well.
Here's my experience. People that have a certain threshold, where they get to a point where it be drugs or alcohol or whatever, or combinations of both. And it doesn't really matter why, but once they cross that line, almost all of them need help somewhere along the way and support for the rest of their lives to live the happy, productive, purposeful lives. There are people, and I knew plenty of them, that drank too much and they were fine. They put it down, they got married, they went to church, whatever it was, and they were fine. And many other people that were not. The one thing, before we go more into your story, is I really want people to understand this. If you have a loved one who has a drug and or alcohol problem, and especially if it's a first responder, military veteran, or a police officer, has a drug or alcohol problem, or post-traumatic stress, whatever it might be, if they're breathing in and out, there's hope for them. There's hope. The hope ends is when their life ends, and that's when the struggle ends. So your son, he said he needed help. And did you help him along the way to point him to people to help, or what'd you do?
Absolutely. And I love what you said about there's always hope, because that's what I believe, that love is the fiercest force and hope outlasts any fear. And so I read about that. But yes, my sons both had a predisposition. You know, a lot of our listeners are going to know this. They had genetics. Their grandfather was an alcoholic and a compulsive gambler. Their age of use was really young. My youngest started using at 13. My older one at 16. They both had ADD and ADHD. But there's no rhyme or reason. No one really knows what causes addiction. And so there's not a one-size-fits-all approach to treating substance use issues or mental health. We had to figure out on our own what worked for them, what worked for our family. And for our family, and maybe not every family is like this, but it was a system issue. It wasn't just them. They didn't want to have an addiction. They didn't start using stimulants when their stepfather passed and they were absolutely hitting the ground with grief. You know, they didn't want to have mental health challenges. Nobody signs up for that and says, yeah, I really want to be addicted to alcohol and stimulants or heroin. You know, people try it because they want the source. They want an answer to their pain, and that's what my sons did. But it was traumatic for me, too, and that's another thing I wanted to talk with you about, John Jay, is that a lot of people don't understand and don't realize they're experiencing vicarious trauma. Like, trauma was really the root of what their issues were. One of my sons has been raped, assaulted, strangled, knifed, held at gunpoint by a dealer. He has tremendous trauma. He's working through it. He knows it. He didn't know it for a long time, though. And so there I was, the mom, going, I would really like you to get help. I'd really like you to talk to somebody besides me. I'm not your therapist. I don't want to be. I'm your mom. But no, I'm fine. I just want to forget about it, was his response. And so pardon me, you were talking about what we want our listeners to know, and I would love people to know, ask for help. Ask for help for yourself. That's what I had to do. I couldn't do it on my own. I couldn't resource from within, and I'm a super strong person. But at any rate, you asked a different question, and I kind of
No, and before we get into your second son's story, I want to make sure that we give credit where credit's due. You as a parent, you do one thing, and we'll talk more about your role in a moment and what you've done. But secondly, he has to take a lot of responsibility for seeing through and sticking with this. And regardless of what got him there, he wound up being there, and it became a life or death situation. So I applaud him for his recovery. And, we could always make situations worse. It doesn't matter. Life is really hard on everybody. So true. When these really bad things happen and someone is a recovering addict or alcoholic or both and has mental health issues and they don't find a way to get some resiliency and I hate to say bounce with the punches, quite often the results can be fatal. And it has a tremendous impact on everybody.
So true. And you're right. They both took accountability at varying levels. But you asked how much I've helped them. I helped them too much in the beginning. And that's a mistake that I bet a lot of us have made.
I'm being a little snarky right now. No. Look, we're talking with Pamela Brinker. And Pamela is a mom of two sons. And both of her sons have mental health issues and drug or alcohol issues and have been sober and recovering for a while. She's authored the book Conscious Bravery, Caring for Someone with Addiction, and also her website is PamelaBrinker.com. When we return on the Law Enforcement Today show, we're going to talk about the incident, the kind of cataclysmic incident with her second son, and then what drove her to do what she's doing today. This is Law Enforcement Today show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
I have some exciting news to share with you. You are going to love my Your Diet Do-Over Do-It-Yourself course on harmonywithfood.com, which means you could do everything at your own pace. I put my heart and soul into this course. Have you been on every diet there is only to gain the weight back? If your relationship with food is, not that good, you should purchase the Your Diet Do-Over course. Go over to harmonywithfood.com, click the Your Diet Do-Over tab, and get started today.
One of the most frequent questions we see is, where can I find great podcasts? Do you have any suggestions? Yes, we do. So we decided to start our own podcast network on Law Enforcement Today. That's right. You can find top podcasts about law enforcement on our website and our free app. Go to letradioshow.com, click the Be Heard tab, and there you'll find the LET Podcast Network. We'll be adding more podcasts from first responders and more. Again, to find the Law Enforcement Today Podcast Network, go to letradioshow.com and click on the Be Heard in our menu, or download our free app today at letradioshow.com. This is Law Enforcement Today's show. Return our conversation with Pamela Brinker, contacting us from Colorado. She's a mom of two, which, by the way, my mother, she's got me and 4 younger sisters, and I don't know how she's done it. And every day was drama and trauma, every day of our lives. Her 2 sons both had mental health issues and drug or alcohol problems, overdoses, and she's the author of the book Conscious Bravery, Caring for Someone with Addiction, and her website is PamelaBrinker.com. Pamela, I'm so glad you're talking about this and willing to, because we said it earlier. I don't know of a family who's not been affected one way or another with a drug or alcohol problem across the United States. And there's overdose deaths, there's overdoses, there's tremendous health problems, hospitalizations, you name it. So I appreciate you coming on and telling your story from your perspective. Your first son, we talked about what happened with him, and we'll get back to that at the end. What happened with the second son? You had a problem with him as well.
Well, he had tremendous challenges of varying sorts, but around, I'd say 8 years ago, we all went to bed, 10 o'clock, 10:30. And this was my youngest son. He was up after I'd gone to bed. And at around 12:30, maybe in the morning, I was awakened by a knock on my bedroom door, and it was the police saying who they were, and I woke up.
Wait, there was a knock at your bedroom door, and it was the police. They were inside your house.
My bedroom door. Yes,
that's never
inside
good.
My house.
That's never good.
It was horrific. I had never had that happen to me. I'd never heard of anyone to whom that had happened. Anyway, got up. They said someone called 911 from your home, and it was your son. And so I ran down the stairs. My son was there. He was sitting on the sofa crying, and he said that he had called 911 and he was clearly on some sort of drug. And I sat down next to him and tried to tenderly but assertively say, "What happened? Why did you call? What's going on?" And he said, "I was afraid I was going to kill our cat." And I just paused and listened. He said, "I had that knife out and I was going to kill Socrates, our cat." And I said, "Well, I'm really glad you called." Anyway, they helped us through that situation, the police, and helped me get calm because I was the one calm in the moment, but began having a lot of panic and anxiety as we spoke. But anyway, the situation went well, and we got him to the hospital because, grace happened, I guess. He called for help and didn't hurt anyone in the interim, and people came on short order. But
was this a drug-related situation?
Yes,
well?
Yes.
I gotta
we
say
never knew exactly
that phone
what all
call.
he took.
There's a saying I've heard many times: God does for us what we can't do for ourselves. A moment of grace. I think you used the term. A moment of clarity. Whatever it is, just thank God it happened.
Absolutely. So he was in the hospital. He went to treatment shortly after that. And then I started really doing fierce work on myself because I thought this is not clearly going away just because I'm wishing it away. And I've got to use all the tools and resources that I've ever taught my clients because I'm a psychotherapist and a workshop leader.
Wait a second. Kind of like we can't just glaze it over. You're a psychotherapist at that point, and you're telling people how they should handle these situations. And did you ever in your life think you'd be in that situation yourself?
I never did. I was an athlete and a musician, and I didn't even drink alcohol till I was 40. I've never used drugs. So this was all new language to me to understand drugs.
Now,
I never
were the
wanted
teacher.
it in my family, tried to prevent it.
Did you find it difficult to go from teacher to the student?
You got it. Oh, boy. Now I can be tongue-in-cheek. Yes, I wanted to come in and just be the therapist and the teacher to my sons that I had been to my clients. And who wants that? Nobody wants a mom who's going to boss them around and tell them what they know, what she knows. So I had to step way back and do what people call loving detachment. And I had to work on myself. And I had to get to know myself and get to know the part of me that was afraid and didn't know what to do and had anxiety that I didn't want. And learn how to be the tall tree that could handle and learn how to manage my panic and even depression sometimes. Sometimes there were days I said, I can't do this. But then I would realize I don't have the luxury of despair. I've got to be a mom that can stand tall.
You sound like my mother there. When you say that, and my dad passed away many years ago from lung cancer, and she always said, he was in the Navy, he was gone a lot on med cruises, those sorts of things, and she ruled the roost. But she always said, I don't have a choice. I'm the mom. I have to do these sort of things. If I don't feel good, if I feel bad, if my back is hurting. She loves to tell a story about when I was a baby, about 6 months old. No. Actually, 11 months older, my sister Mary Helen was born, and my mom had to crawl around because she couldn't walk. But she said, I'm the mother. I didn't have a choice. These kids needed me. What are you going to do? You can't just fold up camp and say, that's it, I give. I'm uncle. I'm done.
Right. It's so true. I love your mom. I love your approach.
She's a trooper. She's a tough lady. I tell people all the time, and we'll get back to your story in a moment. I have never been hit harder in my life than by my mom. And I'm not saying that I've had brawls with killers and all kinds of stuff as a police officer, and none of them could pack a punch like she did. So your son had this moment of clarity. He called for help. And I'm going to kind of fast forward because I think the real magic is going to be in you and your transformation. He went for help. He got help. Is he doing okay now?
Yes, he's doing okay now. Absolutely. He actually became a peer recovery coach for a short period of time, but they're both doing okay now, and they want to help other people. And hats off to both of them because
that's right.
No parent wants to become people throw out the word codependent. I don't love that word because I don't think everyone is. We all just want to help, and we do our best to do that. And it turns out sometimes we manage or overmanage. I overmanaged. I over-enabled. But anyway, I try to be really aware now. That's why I like the word conscious. I try to be conscious now. And whether or not they continue to succeed, John Jay, I've got to.
Right.
I cannot control them. The 3 C's. I didn't cause it. I can't control it. I can't cure it.
That sounds a little bit like Al-Anon to me.
Yeah, it's used by Al-Anon in treatment centers. It's a really wise,
and it's a great thing. Again, one of the key things is for those we know people that are affected. And they live with alcoholics, they live with drug addicts or whatever, and their life is like in a blender, up and down and out of control. And the trick is, how do I have a happy life in spite of? And I'm a father of 2 daughters. Even though they're in their 30s now, they're both really doing very well. I went through that period of time where I worried about them as well and had those talks with them and said, hey, I think the term you used before was it runs in the families. I'm paraphrasing. I come from Irish immigrants, and our family has had issues for a very long time with alcoholism. And for me to think, or for my daughters to think that they're somehow immune, is something that we've got to have the frank conversation about.
Brilliant. And I love that because we've got to teach not just our own families, but our friends and neighbors and people we love to look at our histories and look at our predispositions. Not that everybody who has a genetic predisposition is going to turn out with an alcohol problem.
My sisters, a lot of them never drank.
We're more vulnerable.
Yeah, a lot of my sisters never drank, and we could talk about that at length. What I really want to talk about is when we return, I promise you, we're going to talk about Pamela's journey from being a mom, overcoming the issues she had to deal with, and what she does about it today. This is Law Enforcement Today Show. We're going to turn to our conversation with Pamela Brinker in just a few moments. Don't go anywhere. I promise you. We'll be right back. The place to be online is our Facebook page. Do a search on Facebook for Law Enforcement Today Radio Show. You'll get access to unique news articles, editorials, and so much more. That's Law Enforcement Today radio show on Facebook. I'm John J. Wiley. This is the Law Enforcement Today show. Return our conversation with Pamela Brinker, mother of two, and so much more. Her two sons both had drug issues, mental health issues. Both are sober, in recovery, and doing well. She talked about those incidents earlier. She wrote the book Conscious Bravery, Caring for Someone with Addiction, and her website is PamelaBrinker.com. And I'm going to say this again, and it's not being overly dramatic. I can't think of a family member right now that has not been affected in the United States by drug or alcohol problems. And so many people in our prisons, we've got a certain segment of our population, prison population, that are hardcore criminals. They're a small minority. We got a lot of people wouldn't be there if it wasn't for drug or alcohol. And I'm not saying they're not responsible for what they do. I'm just saying that's the reality. And then we have a segment that had 10 bad minutes in their life and made a bad choice. So having said that, I'm so glad your sons are on the right path and doing well. My concern is, and I think where a lot of people don't get to hear about, is you went through a journey and a transformation as well, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. And I had been an athlete. I'd been a triathlete. I'd known how to work harder to make things better. But that didn't work out for me with my sons and their challenges. I had to learn how to relax and how to pause and breathe consciously to handle things and to change my my lit up autonomic nervous system, when I was in a panic mode. And so I really have had to do diligent work. And yet I had been a vibrantly happy person for most of my life. Most of my friends say, you're really joyous. Even one of my friends gave me a little plate that says joyous. But I wanted to return to that. But I realized after a couple of years of doing therapy and yoga and meditation and still hiking and biking and so forth, that I couldn't return to who I'd been before. I had to basically transform and become someone different, a solid mom who understood the dangers of the world and of addiction and got more savvy. I got more educated. I read everything under the sun about substance use issues and mental health issues and have attended all different kinds of groups, NAMI, Changes, they're all great. And got a mentor for myself and did my work in therapy and continue to. But really what I would say I have to believe is that, like you said earlier, there's always hope. And so I wake up and I don't put my feet on the floor until I can say a couple of things that give me gratitude. Like I've got a roof over my head. You can pretty much always be thankful for that. I'm always thankful that I have food. I'm thankful that my sons are alive. And even I've been thankful for that even when they've been homeless. They've chosen homelessness a few times because they didn't want to go to treatment or be sober or live in a sober house. And they didn't want to live with me and receive help. And so I've had to let go so much and learn how to find my own joy and happiness. And I know it does not depend on my situation or their situation. It doesn't depend on their circumstances or my own. It depends on who I am inwardly. And my connection with, I call it the beloved. Some people call it God, the divine, the infinite, but I have to have a connection with something greater that I resource from all the time. And so I pray a lot. I send good energy to myself, to others. I start with myself because if I don't have it inside of me, I can't give it.
Yeah. No, you can't give away what you don't have. I got to say this. I'm not one who's a preacher. I'm not a Pentecostal. I'm not an evangelist. But I pray daily. And I meditate. And I do a lot of things you talk about. Why? Because it works for me. And quite often it's praying in the car. Because that way I know I'm getting it in. I'm getting it done. Here's one thing. I want to go back to our conversation because you were a therapist and you're like, okay, I should know how to handle this. And I thought immediately of my situation and a situation for a lot of police and first responders and military. I couldn't solve my own problems using the problem. I couldn't figure out a way to fix my own life, even though I did that with other people's. And I found it very frustrating. The more I tried, the more effort I did, the more willpower I did, the worse it got.
Absolutely. The same was true for me. So I had to learn what I call assertive surrender, and most people are familiar with the 12 steps. The first one is about realizing I'm sort of powerless. Well, who wants to admit we're powerless? It's actually a really strong thing to say, I don't have control over this thing, at least not complete control. I do have control over what I do every day. So I love that you pray in the car. Good for you. I wrote an article called Meditate Wherever You Go.
Yeah.
And I do it. I'll do yoga in the parking lot. That's another blog I wrote.
Well,
Yoga
you're better than me because I don't do yoga anywhere. And one of the things I got to say this, my meditation has really not expanded more in 30 plus years, has not expanded more than not thinking and trying to keep my mind clear. And my wife, who I call the boss, like we're on a long drive, she'll go, what are you thinking? And I have to make up stuff because I really spend a lot of time not thinking at all. And it's wonderful.
Nice. Good for you. I think you're rare. Most of the clients I've had and people at my workshops say that their minds are just buzzing with, like 5 different thoughts at once or different options, or they're ruminating over the past or fixating on the future. And so you learned something that I'm still trying to learn, but I do have moments of it where there is calm and clear-mindedness. And I think it's when I'm most connected to my heart, to love, and I anchor down and I feel the ground underneath me. And like I said, I'm connected to something greater than myself. And a lot of people, I don't think, have that groundedness that you're talking about, but they want it. And that's what I believe is conscious bravery. Having some ability to be resilient and to see options and to do what's needed in any given moment. But it doesn't just come with the wave of a wand. It has to be cultivated. We have to work at it all
for me,
the time.
it's a lot of work. And I always have to develop fire drills in my head. When this starts to happen, I need to do this. And otherwise, there's old things I was taught a long time ago. You want to change a thought, you got to move a muscle. You got to do something physical. There's a lot of things I had to learn to do. And by the way, I don't want anyone to think that, I've arrived, or somehow I think I've arrived. I'm not. I still do those things every day. It just takes a whole lot less effort than in the beginning. And the results are phenomenal. One of the things for me, Pamela, and I got to ask you this, is I found a tremendous purpose by putting my pain and my past to try to help other people. In particular, using this as a platform, the radio show, for other people to tell their stories. Is your pain part of your passion and your mission what drives you today?
Absolutely. That's why I wrote the book. So you're asking how I got to this place. I found hope. And I got in my body, like you're saying. Instead of just floating above my life, I got grounded and I live in my body, and I do somatic things like go for walks and get exercise and move and, breathe consciously. And so I started writing about all the things that not only had I taught my clients, but I had modified for myself that I knew worked. And I was teaching my new clients and watching them grow and change in just, days and weeks. So some of the things I teach in my book, Conscious Bravery, can be done just today on short order. They can be done in a minute or two, breathing consciously, learning to make friends with difficult feelings like shame and guilt and use them for motivation to change, things like that. Asking for help. How do you do it? You have to, like you said, I love that, set an alarm clock, or what did you say?
Fire drills. I got to do something.
In your head. So I put a fire drill in my head before I get to a 10 on the continuum. So my fire drill goes off at a 3. And when I'm starting to feel a little anxious, I either journal or go for a walk, or I'll call a friend or text a friend. And I'm real and honest. I haven't got it together either, but I'm so much better than I was years ago. And so if I call a friend,
glad to hear that.
Try to be real.
I'm glad to hear you're not one of these people that arrived, but you're doing a whole lot better than you were. The name of your book is Conscious Bravery, Caring for Someone with Addiction. You have a web presence where people can get more information as well. Tell us about that.
I have a website, PamelaBrinker.com. I've written, 35 blogs on there. There are testimonials from my clients. There's some really hopeful tips. You can go online and sign up for my email. I have a Bravery Bite, B-I-T-E, that goes out twice a month. It's just free. I'm just here to help people. That's part of my mission. Is I want to see people get better. I want to see us break the stigma as a group collectively. I can't do it on my own. And so you can go on my website. You can buy my book there. It's really inexpensive right now because it was a bestseller in May in Amazon. reduce the price because they overstocked. So it's like around $3 right now if you go to Amazon.com and look up Conscious Bravery, Pamela Brinker. I narrated it on Audible. And I have a YouTube channel too, John Jay, and it has little 2-minute shorts that hopefully could be helpful to anyone.
Pamela, I'm really so appreciative that you came and told your story, very much needed. And please, again, tell your sons I said thank you and well done.
Thank you so much. I will tell them that. And it's just a joy talking with you. And it's really a pleasure and an honor to be here with you and your listeners.
I'd like to thank our guests so much for coming on the Law Enforcement Today radio show. The Law Enforcement Today radio show is a nationally syndicated radio show broadcast on numerous stations once a week and growing. If you enjoyed the podcast version of the show, please do me a big favor. Tell a friend. I'll be back in just a couple days with a brand new episode of the Law Enforcement Today radio show and podcast. Until then, this is John J. Wiley. See ya.